Hi, everyone, and welcome to Web3 Reality Check. This is actually episode number 2 of our series. And today we'll explore a few crucial questions around the concept of Metaverse. Metaverse, actually, people who are close to the creative communication and marketing industry hear this word constantly, but are the opportunities for brands to be part of it? And what do gaming and Metaverse have in common as concepts? And what are the most advanced technologies that make the current idea of Metaverse possible? These are just a few of the topics that we will explore today in our webinar. And this session is going to be about Metaverse, NFTs, and beyond, and how brands can use the technologies that are already there and developing to have a real impact. I'm Stefano, I'm from We Are Social, and I'm your host for today. And I will be joined in a few minutes by an really extraordinary group of guests. We have Sallyann Houghton from Epic Games. We have Serena Tabacchi, who is the co-founder of the Museum of Contemporary Digital Art, and from Sandbox as well, and Nick Wilson from the Sandbox. If you have any questions, please feel free to type your question in the comment section, and we will pick one or two or three, depending on the time that we have to answer that later after the panel. So, as I told you, this is the second part of our Web3 Reality Check series. In the first part, my colleague and global CSO at We Are Social, Moby Nazir, with Laura Oxford, our global head of cultural insights, explored the biggest opportunities for brands to add value to Web3 and how to contribute to the next era of the internet. They shared a very compelling framework about how brands can enter this space. So if you haven't attended, I suggest you watch it, and you can find it easily on our social channels or just by scanning the QR code that you see on screen here. So Web3 is founded on communities, on their creativity, and the social aspect of them. And at We Are Social, being a socially led creative agency with offices all over the world, it's part of our DNA to study the underlying dynamics and technologies of this evolution. And this definitely is part of how we make sure that brands can be as relevant as possible for their audiences by maximizing their cultural impact. And we also have what we call a Web3 layer of We Are Social, which is all about consulting with clients directly and harnessing the strategic and creative capabilities within our global network of professionals. And we have established We Are Social gaming offering that focuses on working with brands on what makes gaming social. So it's about understanding gaming culture, about enhancing the gaming experience, about navigating the gaming ecosystem and amplifying the impact that content and messages from brands and from people can have in gaming environments. We are likely to do that with a set of forward-looking clients that work with us. And as a company, we are passionate about the evolution of marketing and the role that brands can play in people's lives. And this shows in our continuous thought leadership work that you can find online, and it's at the basis of today's event as well. We also have a global cultural trends tracking project that lives on Instagram, and make sure you follow it. It's called The Feed, and you find it at thefeed.global. Follow it to keep up to date about what's happening in internet culture. So, on to our session. We'll start with a quick overview about what Metaverse means today. Then we'll move to our panel session with our guests, and then we'll take any questions you might want to ask about what we're going to see today. So Web3 is constantly evolving as a concept, and so are the underlying technologies. And also, there's another field that's been evolving in terms of what it is and in terms of how many people it touches, which is gaming. Gaming has really become something mainstream, something that everybody plays or takes part to, gaining the attention of billions of people worldwide. And so it is so strong that somebody said that the term gamer will be as irrelevant as the label movie watcher very soon. And there's also another technology which is important to keep an eye on, which is NFT. NFTs are no longer just for, let's say, crypto nerds, not because of huge press coverage or wider adoption, but because the principles of these technologies are foundational to many of the experiences that we are seeing emerging. More traditional players are embracing these technologies, and think about Instagram beginning to test NFTs as digital collectibles. Adam Mosseri, just a few hours ago at TED, declared that blockchain is going to be a very interesting technology for the future of creators. And what about the metaverse? So the metaverse has been named by many or treated by many as something to put a landmark on, to put a flag on. Some of the players have pointed out that what's very necessary in that space is collaboration among platforms. And the decentralized space that are at the basis of the metaverse can only benefit from collaboration. And it can sound like science fiction today, and it actually, as many of you know, comes from science fiction, from a book by Neil Stephenson published in '92 called Snow Crash. But the very effects of the metaverse in everything that is marketing and communication are starting to appear. And so this is why we are looking at the metaverse from a point of view that touches creativity, marketing, and branding. So we can identify 4 pillars of the metaverse. One is the fact that it's persistent, that is live, that is based on an autonomous economy to an extent, and that's interoperable. We have many of these elements, but especially one, interoperability, is really in its infancy, and we don't see it yet in many different experiences. So people spend a huge amount of time in their lives on digital and social experiences. So these are a big part already of people's life. And people are really not looking for new platforms. Data and studies that we see every day show us they don't look for new spaces, new platforms. They look for something else. They look for meaningful ways to find entertainment, to socialize, and to have fun with other people. And in many ways, metaverses, in many different nuances of metaverses, are already succeeding in that, are matching those behaviors and those needs. And they're already being there. Breaking news is these spaces have been among us for years, because we often call them video games. Video games have been there for solid more than 30 years and have really changed the way we interact with each other. And each one can be classified as a slightly different type of metaverse or approach to metaverse. But what's important to see here is brands are understanding that entering these spaces means actually playing a part, not just showing content to people, but be an active component in them. We've already seen important experiences that cross gaming and metaverse at the same time, in the same context. And also we are seeing communities, influence dynamics, products, creativity coming together on creative activities and campaigns that are developed by brands every day. So now let's get to our guests, and we will discuss what the present and the future for the metaverse looks like. So I will directly switch to them, and I would start from the introductions. Welcome, everyone. So I'll start with Sallyann. Hello, Sallyann. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and about you?
Sure, I'll try and be as quick and succinct as possible. As we discussed, it's It's not easy. I don't have an easy job title. So I kind of basically my whole career, the last 20 years, which is terrible saying out loud, I've been in creative content in one way or another. I started in agencies, working predominantly on beauty and luxury and fashion. Moved through agencies, then wanted to kind of be more hands-on, so set up a production company, and then I was asked to go out to New York and set up within the Mill content creation studio a director luxury and fashion kind of in-house agency, just at a time when we were all starting to talk about non-linear content. And we'd kind of come from linear and not really used linear because it didn't mean anything. But suddenly it was non-linear. It was AR and VR. There was lots of experiential, and so I started sort of incorporating into our content strategy. Interactive pieces, and game engines became a thing, and so that kind of evolved over the 9 years I was out there in New York, and then joined Epic Games around about 3 and a little bit years ago. And so what I do at Epic Games is I am business development. I fall under media and entertainment, and I specialize in the fashion industry and luxury and beauty. And I come together with the fashion industry, and I help them better understand everything that is this technological revolution that we're going through at the moment. Game engine technology, the wider landscape, the use of digital tools. But I also I'm a conduit from the fashion industry into Epic as well. What does the fashion industry need from the development of this space? What do they need in order to build out pipelines and to have accessible tools? Everything that I do kind of spins off into partnerships and executions and proof of concepts, and maybe even TV and film, as fashion does. It goes across the arts, TV, film, and celebrity. So sorry, that was a really long-winded explanation into what I do.
No, it sounds great. And also, I think you're part of many of the content that we've seen in the slides, like the animations or backgrounds that were in the slides that I shared before. So background is very broad and super interesting, and is very, as the metaverse also, it's very broad, so very useful and very interesting to have you on the panel. Thanks for being here. So I will move to Serena. Good to have you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Of course. Thank you. And I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks, Stefano and everyone. So yeah, I'm Serena Tabacchi, and I have been involved in art and gaming for quite some times. Not that long, actually, but I always had a keen interest in arts in general, and I'm a bit nerd, so I combined the two. So I joined the Sandbox a while ago as a creator for games that were going to be developed in the Sandbox. So I took part in the program that supports groups of creatives that have skills in building as architects in the metaverse, and also building stories that connect NFTs as art in 3D in voxels. So that was quite interesting, and I've collaborated with artists like Lia Catau and Fabiano Speziari. So that was my first entry into this world. Then I joined the marketing team at the Sandbox, and recently I moved to the partnerships team, where I'm developing connections with mainly luxury brands, but also different kinds of I would say not only brands, but also individuals that want to enter the metaverse with a creative twist. So that's what I sort of specialized in. Alongside that, I co-founded in 2019 MOCDA, which is the Museum of Contemporary Digital Art, through which we've been educating and curating shows with digitally native art and artists. So I actually just came back from Florence, where a show opened last night that saw some of the most prominent artists in the crypto art space. And we're also curating the NFT Institute inside the Sandbox in the upcoming seasons of the Sandbox Alpha. So it's a very interesting journey that spans between IRL and URL shows, which I'll be delighted to talk to you more about.
Wow, it's great to see also the intersection between art, crafting, crypto, NFT, all of these technologies coming together, not just as technologies, but as means to, in this case, an artistic and creative end. So that's very good to get into later. So thanks for being here. I'll get to Nick also. Hello and welcome to you too. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, your focus?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Much like Serena, I'm on the part of the Sandbox as well, and I'm on the partnerships team, and I joined a couple of months ago. In terms of very quick background, what led me to the Sandbox and Web3 in general. So I worked, I've also got a media background, so 10 years in the advertising industry. I worked for companies like Yahoo and Orange, but also did some media startups in Dubai where I worked for 4 years as well. Alongside that, I've always been a gamer. I've pretty much owned every console that's ever been made, big PC gamer back in the day. So it made sense that about 4 years ago, I combined my hobby of gaming with the digital advertising industry and background that I've got it. And it led me to the intersection was working in esports, which is professional video gaming, for those who don't know. So for the last 4 or 5 years, I've worked for ESL, which are a big tournament organizer. They do big stadium events for professional gaming. And then Sport5, which is a global sports marketing agency. And during that time, I was sat in the middle of the teams and the players and the brands. So I would be helping a bunch of brands enter the space, such as worked with ASOS, Sony, Hisense, Chubba Chubs, and partnering them essentially with esports teams like Fnatic and XL, who play games like League of Legends and Counter-Strike. So for the past 4 years, it's really been working with brands, helping them understand their business and marketing objectives, and then mapping on the correct digital solution within gaming, whether that's pro gaming teams, tournaments, individual influencers, and everything in between. So I think fast forward to today, it's kind of all led me to the Sandbox, and my role at the Sandbox is I do a similar sort of thing, and it's first and foremost helping brands understand the space and kind of what's going on, and then advise them on how to enter to achieve long-term success.
Thanks. It's also awesome to see the background of gaming that in some way is like a fil rouge among your experiences. So I think we'll get into that again also later. And I would kick off our panel with Sallyann with a question for you. It's a very direct and simple question, which is, what does the metaverse look like in Epic Games' vision?
Wow. Well, you say that it's a simple question, but
the question is simple.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
The answer.
The metaverse is it's a huge concept, and it's a huge concept to get your arms around and define. And I've actually been trying not to use the word metaverse anymore, in order to encourage people to be more specific about where they are in their journey in this space. And so what I'm going to do, in order to answer the question, I'm going to kind of just give you a better understanding of Epic, because I think it actually really guides you into our vision. And so a lot of people know Epic for Fortnite. And actually, the company kind of splits into two sides, the gaming and the non-gaming. And Unreal Engine, the game engine that powers 3D interactive real-time experiences, runs through everything that we do. So Unreal Engine powers Fortnite and it powers other games, and we license it to AAA games developers to make their games. And then on the non-gaming side of the company, we utilize Unreal Engine as almost like at the kind of the center of our gravitational pull. And we have lots of other services and tools that are all about world building. They're all about, immersive digital experience building. And we work with lots of different industries, but in most cases, we sort of develop these tools and we give them away. We give them away to creators so that they can utilize the tools to build experiences, so we can move towards the metaverse concept, which fundamentally is real-time 3D. It's real-time 3D experiences, whatever they may be, all coming together, and as you beautifully listed out, all coming together and eventually being interoperable, having interoperability. So Epic's sort of vision of the future of this metaverse concept is, a very open space, a very creatively driven experiential space, open to anyone wherever you live on the spectrum of 3D skill set. And we've got a long way to go to make this totally accessible and totally open and for everyone to be able to be involved. But I think our aim is to develop tools and develop environments and services and platforms and ecosystems and communities so that the many can do that, and so the many can benefit from this metaverse concept.
Yeah, and speaking about developing communities, I think also the economic side is an important one that also touches ownership. And relating to that, I would on that ask Serena, being the co-founder of the Museum of Contemporary Digital Art, you have a privileged point of view about the evolution of digital ownership, also related to arts in this case, and creation. How do you think the metaverse is changing the world of how people own non-physical objects?
That's a very interesting one. I believe people started collecting non-digital items as art quite recently. And so the functionalities of those assets have been developing in a very short time. That means through the smart contracts, which are those kind of contracts, but digital ones that can be programmed, there are some functionalities that you can insert and apply to what you see as art. That in fact, there are actually things that you can predict also that are also valuable for what you own. So if you were a collector, I'm sure you will care about provenance and the history of a work of art, which is something that today you can get in a better clarity. Given that galleries and museums have always struggled to preserve archives and create standards around sort of like tracing the past of an artwork and also capturing the present and passing these on to the future. Now with standards around NFTs, it's easier, let's say, to mark those down. And also there's no kind of influence, human influence in that. And it's way more transparent and mechanical. Of course, this technology is not perfect. There are so many areas that still need to be developed. And I think today, as communities come together through the formation of DAOs and so on, DAOs, just for everyone's reference, decentralized autonomous organizations, which means ways in which people gather around a specific topic or something that they care about, discuss it, and suggest proposals that others can vote. So depending on what people feel about a specific topic, those things will generally be implemented by tech teams that create the infrastructure for art, such as NFTs. So in terms of possibilities, really, what I believe is fascinating today is that a digital asset can acquire value for itself, not just because of the aesthetic or because of the artist that created the work, but because there are several factors that can be traced and reported into this kind of contract that is a document, like a certificate that will be carried with the artwork for life. So essentially, it's a way for implementing functionalities, but also utilities around a specific work of art that could be shown not just in a physical location, but also across different metaverses. So the possibilities really are, I don't want to say infinite, but, they are whatever we want them to be. And everyone can have a huge influence in the future of what digital art could be in the future.
Yeah, and I think building on that, just before moving to Nick, I think another field that's evolving and it's seeing a strong change also based on new technologies is fashion. And I wanted to ask, given your background, Sallyann, I wanted to ask you, what do you think the biggest changes in fashion are right now, thanks to, let's say, the metaverse, even though it's a very broad term?
Well, I think that there's always the two sides to sort of developments. There's how companies and industries develop internally, and then there's the external sort of visualization or messaging. And so I think externally, because the digital processes, digital pipelines, digital tools have become more and more sophisticated, the fashion industry are actually taking note, and they are an incredibly creative and incredibly visual, incredibly emotional industry, and they're storytellers. And we now have, with powerful tools, this opportunity to create any visual, any aesthetic within an incredibly emotional, immersive environment. And so we've naturally seen lots and lots more collections being launched, or even linear content created in this way, and events in immersive spaces, and partnerships in gaming spaces. I think there's always going to be the community side of things, in that gaming platforms allow for you to access a wider, often different or diverse community to your your normal community. But I do think that it's also very aesthetically driven. I think that now we are able to create digital doubles, and so as an industry that's obsessed with aesthetics, they're able to sort of gravitate towards these tools and utilize them to really really show their vision to the world on different platforms in different ways, and really allow people to be immersed in that vision.
And I think you said something that's very crucial to the point of how gaming communities are developing. And to connect to that, I wanted to ask Nick, also given your background, Nick, we are seeing that from avatar customization to traditional gaming, the ability to create gaming experiences and products, and also autonomous organizations, is founded on the ability to build a community, and especially a community of creators. So my question for you is, how can a platform help building a community of creators?
Yeah. So with the Sandbox, it's one of our key pillars of why the whole platform exists, and that's giving creators and anyone really the platform of building mechanics to create whatever they want in terms of what they look like, the experience, the games, and all things of that nature. So within the Sandbox client, there's two programs which actually are user-generated building tools called Vox Edit and Game Maker. And these are very simple drag and drop systems, very quickly and easily allow you to jump in, and anyone can create their own games and experiences and then mint them as an NFT, which you then own. So these tools they're designed specifically so anyone can use them, no matter your skill level. You don't need any experience in art or design or technology. There's no coding required. They're very simple to use. So that's the way that we're essentially putting the tools in the hands of the community, because when you arm people with the right tools, that's when you get all of the cool new stuff, all of the creativity, and people can really kick on with visions of the metaverse and Web3 and digital and gaming in their eyes. And I think we're just seeing a lot of really cool creative expression come out of this. You give the people the right tools, and then you get some amazing results.
Yeah, I think it also connects to something that Epic Games and Unreal is doing about putting the tools in the hands of creators. And Sallyann, how do you think, also to share with you the same question, how do you think a player like Unreal Engine can make a difference for creator by providing tools, by providing education? What are the key elements for being a point of reference for the creators world?
Well, I think kind of that, you know, Nick and, you know, you have just hit on them really, in that you've got to put these tools into people's hands, so they need to be accessible, but they also need to be accessible to different skill sets. You know, some people will be further along their skill, their talent, or, you know, all the time they've spent utilizing this type of software, but you don't want to create barriers to entry in any way, shape and form. And so you want there to be accessibility, you want there to be, you know, them to be incredibly creative, you want the output to be, you know, to very much be, you know, positively reaffirm what they already knew, which is this is an incredibly creative space that they want to be part of. But, you know, you touched on it, Stefano, in that you also do need this backbone of education and support. And, you know, the gaming community and the developer community are a community. They are very community driven, and there's loads and loads of resources out there. There's loads and loads of groups, and we have a creator hub where you can come and you can access lots and lots of resources to learn and to ask questions and to have a look at tutorials. So it's kind of like a magic triangle. You know, you want to get the tools into people's hands, you want to support them in their learning curve, and then you want somewhere for them to sort of show and get feedback and then want to keep creating in a space.
Yeah, and we talked about creators, we talked about communities, people, talking about brands. Serena, what do you think are the best ways for brands to be relevant for their communities in the metaverse, or especially in the sandbox?
Thank you for this question. Something that we've noticed working at the Sandbox is that there's always an interest in creating connections between the digital audience and the audience that will just simply walk into a shop and, you know, do the usual customer journey as we know it, right? So I think finding a common ground for both would be amazing, and that's something that we're trying to achieve. There are multiple ways, there isn't just the one way, but there are ways in which you could link, for example, an NFT to an IRL object. So that means creating a tangible asset linked to a non-physical object as an NFT. Keeping that, you know, authenticity and uniqueness of something that is digital, therefore it could be duplicated as many times. So this is something that brands liked very much. And I believe it would be very much used, especially in fashion and other types of categories, but definitely, you know, it's a great way of finding also an entry point for people that don't have a wallet, don't deal with cryptocurrencies, don't know what the metaverse is, or, you know, never really participated in. So that's a very good way of starting that. Another way could be rewarding your customers or people that have an interest in your brand with something digital. So whenever you gift somebody with something that is, you know, something that they can participate in and they have an interest, because maybe that something could unlock something else. That's a good way, again, for brands to facilitate that kind of like education towards digital new environments. So I think the limit is our creativity, and very much in line with the brand identity and vision that you want to push forward. So I think once that is clear, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's easier to replicate it in the virtual space. So it's about the way you want to talk to your community, the way you want to engage, and you can find the right connection between something that is very user-friendly with something that could be more difficult to grasp, but that you can make it easy for people in a very accessible way today. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see that the what really drives everything in terms of strategy and creativity for brands is what people expect to do in these spaces, in these environments. And so adding to that, Sallyann, one question for you is about the fact that the gaming environment has long become a place that is dedicated to more than just playing games. So people are expressing themselves, are socializing, are buying things, and also are interacting with brands. And so why do you think this is happening? What made this unlock become something that we see every day, from just gaming to all of these?
I think I think it loops back to the fact that we are, over the last 10, 25 years, depending on how far you go back, we've all been spending more and more time in digital spaces. And so as a result, that those spaces become more valuable and our expectations of those spaces become higher. So, and if you're a gamer, you've been spending time in digital spaces that are, in comparison to the rest of us kind of, scrolling through things, are, very sophisticated, and they're very immersive, and they're fun. Like, they're great places to be. That gamers are hanging out there because they want to be there. They're socializing. They're forming connections. They're building communities. And then it grows out of your use of the space. And so if you are utilizing virtual worlds and immersive spaces to socialize and to form connections, then what do you do when you socialize? Well, you go places with your friends. You have experiences, and a three-dimensional space that's fully interactive in real time is the most perfect place to experience things. You're not looking at photos, you're not reading about it, you're surrounded by it. And so I think it's a very natural progression to go from a fun game environment, whether you're building or running or shooting, to an environment where you're being immersed in a slightly different form of entertainment, whether that is in amongst the new generation of like virtual concerts, which are gaming meets concert, meets some kind of audio, spatial, visual experience, or whether you are like part of a jumbotron moment, or a museum piece, or test driving a car. These are all experiences that sit really well within immersive environments, that it's been taken to the next level by being within a three-dimensional space. So it feels a very natural progression, and more people are coming to these spaces, even if it's not a gaming platform. That more and more people are having events in virtual spaces. More and more people are meeting up, as Serena said, which I think was really, really insightful. Having that connection, giving your customers and your community these very exclusive, almost gifts, digital gifts, is becoming more and more popular. And I think it's a really, really smart way of engaging your community. So people are coming to these spaces and they are interacting with 3D objects or 3D worlds, more and more new people. And so it's just becoming, like I say, it's becoming what we expect. So, we're very much seeing these as valuable experiences and valuable connections, and we're expecting that level of engagement.
And also, I think that something that's amazing is how those experiences have become more and more accessible to everybody. I was just blown away by the announcement a few days ago of the collaboration between Microsoft and Epic Games, making sure that Fortnite could be played on any browsers, basically. So people were just playing it from their smartwatch, basically. So it's really taking all of these experiences to another level, and making sure that everybody, regardless of their hardware or the time of day that they're accessing these environments, everybody can really be able to engage with that. So that's super interesting. And brands need to be up to it, need to have a level of creativity that can match the expectations of such a big and demanding audience. And on that point, I would like to ask something to every one of you. I would start with Nick, and it's about brands. So I'd like to ask each one of you about one interesting brand action that you've seen in the metaverse lately, and also if you can tell us why you think that's indicative of how the metaverse is evolving, or why it's particularly remarkable.
Yeah, no problem. I think there's been a few good entrants. I've seen like what Nike have done with acquiring a brand, a leading fashion brand called Artifact, and Adidas have partnered with leading NFT art influencers and a leading PFP project called the Bored Ape Yacht Club. We're helping other brands enter in the space as well, and currently building their experience with like for Gucci and TV shows like The Walking Dead and Warner Music Group and all their artists. But I think in terms of the project that I've seen that, and this isn't because it's one that we did at the Sandbox, but I've picked this one, the partnership with Snoop Dogg, because I think it provides the best example of a ton of good best practices that people need to consider when entering Web3. A quick overview of the actual the project itself. So it's multi-layered. So Snoop, he wanted people to visit his mansion in LA. This is very difficult to get everyone there in the real world. So he wanted us to build an equivalent in the Sandbox where he can display his art, concerts, and various different gaming quests and things like that. So we built that. He's famous for having a vintage car collection. So again, we've completely rebuilt that. And then we're going to be assigning them as NFTs, and they're going to have value and utility as things progress in the metaverse. If you own one of those, you're going to be able to unlock different experiences. And then finally, we produced a 10,000 collection of Snoop Dogg playable avatars. And these represented Snoop Dogg's classic looks from across the years, spanning a 25-year career. And if you owned one of these avatars, you were able to actually unlock utility and experiences and benefits within the Sandbox. So not only was your avatar, could it maybe have more health or more damage to work in certain experiences, but it had a ton of utility within the Sandbox, but importantly, offline as well. So early access to more events, exclusive content. It gave you better performance in games. If you had a rare avatar, it makes it a collectible, and people love having rare stuff. As well as then parlaying that to offline as well, where you're going to have first access to tickets, merchandise, and things like that. So that's the key to it. It's getting things working online and offline, which now we've got blockchain technology and NFTs. That's possible. Now, the really cool thing about the Snoop Dogg project and how it's evolving is he released his first ever Metaverse music video, and that was built within the Sandbox game mechanics. But the cool thing about the music video was, if you get a chance to watch it, you can see about five or eight different versions of Snoop Dogg, and those avatars are all uniquely owned by his fans. So essentially now the fans are starting to star in music videos, they're the star of the music video, which then how it's going to pan out is there's going to be revenue opportunities and royalty opportunities, and you can become a star and you can become famous, and it's going to provide a whole new avenue of creativity in film and music, and actually being the star of your show with your avatar. So it's just really cool, and we just keeps evolving and just keeps doing really, really groundbreaking stuff. So it's just a good example of a project which has been well thought through, and it keeps adding more and more value for the users, which is the important thing, with a long-term time horizon, which is very important when entering the space.
Yeah, and also I think it's very strong on the community side, because it allows people to be in some ways creator themselves rather than just passive audiences. Yeah. So it's thanks for the example. It's really interesting. And I would go with the same question for Serena as well. If you have any tales about a brand that you think has done well in the metaverse.
Yeah, absolutely. I was quite fascinated, and also this is a subject we haven't talked about yet much, which is interoperability, about Adidas joining the metaverse. And I love the kind of like relationship and image they wanted to share in associating something that has been going on since the 90s. I was personally, somebody that was wearing Adidas jumpers and, the gym suit all the time. I was a huge fan, and now I see that brand taking back life, being revived, but in a digital fashion. So I was very excited to see how the Bored Apes and the Sandbox and Adidas narratives, they all build up together into something that could also be interoperable. So the fact that you know, by owning an ape, you can make an avatar as well in Sandbox, and that can be part of your collection. So you can display as a 2D artwork in your gallery, but it could also be an avatar that takes life, and you give it any you know, type of character you want. So, you know, you can play around with the construction of your way of being in the metaverse. Plus, you have a connection with a world which is representing the way you want to look, you know, the way you want to dress, and the way you want to, again, it's a way of communicating to people how you feel like, which it's, you know, identifying you as a person, you know, an identity, but doesn't have to be, you know, a name, a skin color, or anything as such, which to me is super interesting. Like using an avatar or a bored ape that can represent you alongside a brand that you feel close to, without having to show your name, your face, or, you know, anything that you don't want to share. So that, to me, allowing a brand to represent you and you represent them, it's a great way of doing marketing for the brand, of course, but also feeling more comfortable in a world that is not like I need to step out of my house and I have to think about what I'm going to dress, because people are going to judge me probably on how I look like, right? So I love that kind of concept, because I think it's way more in line with Web3 and with the potential also of being way more connected and integrated, and diverse at the same time, which I know it doesn't mean anything, but probably, you know, the plurality of things that we can do in such a space, it's, yeah, way more welcoming for me, in my view, for brands.
Yeah, it's definitely empowering, and I think also that the example is super interesting from the point of view of interoperability. It's one of the, as you said, one of the cases that's most interesting from that point of view, because it merges different worlds, different experiences online, but also offline in a way. And it's, yeah, I think it's a very exciting case study to look to. Yeah. And Sallyann, what about you?
Great examples, guys. I love anything and everything that Artifact have done and been doing. They're recently bought by Nike. You kind of can't beat the trajectory that they've sort of created in the space. It's funny how sort of Nick was saying about Snoop and him, you know, having his music video. I think that we've had some such interesting, basically the crossover between sort of filmmaking, media, music, and also digital spaces, and people actually within you know, persistent virtual spaces shooting, you know, live experiences, like shooting a music video within virtual worlds, and then that being the linear content that's attached to a, you know, a more traditional piece of media. I love that concept, you know, just folding in of these different ways of approaching spaces and media and entertainment. But the one that I was going to talk about, just because I know it better than any other, is Balenciaga, the Balenciaga partnership. And Balenciaga, to be totally honest, because they you know, they went from launching their own little mini game, and to a gamer it wasn't a game, but to someone that hasn't been in a virtual space, it was the most gamified experience of a fashion collection they'd ever had. Then they did a, you know, a linear piece of content that was all sort of built in UE, the same as the game, and then they partnered, we did a big partnership in Fortnite Creative that was, you know, it was incredibly multifaceted. It was incredibly collaborative as well. There was, what does Balenciaga garments look like in, you know, in a totally different aesthetically driven space? So there was the crossover of, you know, Fortnite designers and Balenciaga designers literally sitting together and to-ing and fro-ing, what, you know, how does our IP get represented within your IP and vice versa? And then there was, you know, how does that go? How does that how do we then make that relevant to players and their interactions? And so, you know, there's tools and there's dances that just, you know, once again allow this to be multifaceted and be about your identity and how you move and how you're seen and how you come together with other players. And then there was, you know, within Fortnite Creative, which is, you know, a creator building space. They you know, aside, they built with a third party, a creator island. So there could be a totally Balenciaga owned space. So they created their own little game within the Fortnite universe. And then there were billboards, and then there was all the classic kind of media. So I felt that it was just you know, this new wave of multi-platform, multimedia, how ideas, how content, how assets can go far and wide across so many different environments and so many different traditional pieces of media, but also then sort of new media in virtual worlds.
That's a great glimpse of the future by looking at something that's already there today, which is great. Thanks for sharing it. And I just still speaking about the future, I have two questions. One is for Nick and Serena, and one is for Sallyann, about milestones for the platforms that you represent here. So one for Nick and Serena is about the fact that the Sandbox, what is Alpha Season 2 represented a big milestone for this environment. But looking beyond that, without asking for spoilers, what do you think we will see the new frontier of evolution for the Sandbox?
Yeah, sure. Serena, shall I go first? Cool. So yeah, so I guess for those who don't know, the alpha seasons in the Sandbox we're progressively opening the Sandbox and adding more and more experiences every few months to make sure that the users are going to get a brilliant experience every time. So as things progress, we're going to open up more and more of the Sandbox, and you'll be access to more and more IP. I think in terms of what's going to be the most exciting thing, I think if we zoom out, it's like the bigger concept, and I think the most exciting thing to think about is these new digital cities and digital nations are being created, and just like cities in real life, they're going to spawn a completely new set of jobs and careers. We're already seeing it in the Sandbox. I think as it continues to become more populated and it starts to open up and operate with a fully functioning underlying economy, there's going to be so many new jobs created, some that you expect and some that we have no idea about. So whether you can be like Serena's been talking about, being an art collector who owns your own gallery, and then you can link that back to your real life art gallery. You could be a tour guide. You'll be able to start creating and building real estate and selling real estate. We're going to have professional gaming. We're going to have virtual concerts, live events, new financial products and instruments, and so much more that I can't even begin to imagine. But every single day, this thing's evolving. And I don't know what's around the corner, but you know, I wake up every day and there's always something new that blows my mind in terms of the level of innovation. And there's no better industry to work in at the moment. It's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. There's been so many jobs opportunities that came about that did not even exist. I can tell you that I know people that had no jobs that now work like, you know, full-time jobs from remote and can travel the world. And, you know, I think that has changed completely. And the types of economies that you can develop in these new virtual worlds are, you know, endless. Of course, I don't want to scare people when we think about something virtual and disconnected with reality, because often we feel like, yes, but then you spend your entire life watching a screen. So I think that's a very good point, but also you need to balance that out. So always creating that fine tune between what's happening in the real world and the virtual world, which doesn't have to be like something, you know, domestified and kind of like pushed away. But it has to be used with responsibilities, and new parameters and standards will have to be created, you know, such as different governances and so on. But the difference is that everyone will be involved. So in terms of the future of the Sandbox, as you know, this is based on a land with different parcels. And once the land sale will be fully completed, the world will be in our hands. So the future of it will be with us, with every one of us that participates into this world, but not just in the sandbox. Because another great thing about the metaverse is that you can make those assets and land and objects we build virtually interoperable. So you can really bridge different metaverses, creating portals and transferring assets from one way to another world. So I think it's down to us how we want to create a revolution in terms of what brands and marketing has been up until now. But honestly, there are so many opportunities out there, and it's just about how we want to shape it.
Yeah. And still talking about milestones, I have a question for Sallyann. The fact that as Tim Sweeney, Epic Games CEO, of course, himself said Fortnite Creative 2.0 is coming this year in 2022. He hinted at this next iteration. So can you tell us why it's so important and why it can be very compelling for brands as well?
Totally. And do you know what? It loops back to everything that we've all talked about. All of the benefits of virtual spaces, and all the priorities, the important needs of making sure that this is an open, creative landscape, and everything that is Epic's ideology of making sure that sophisticated tools are in creators' hands so that they can build. And Fortnite Creative has always been our creative mode, where we can hand over sort of simple, accessible tools to creators within the Fortnite universe and allow them to build their own little games. And they have been, and I think it's like 50% of visitors to Fortnite now go to the Fortnite Creative mode, which shows how the community they want to have their own experiences. They want to build, they want to be creative, they want to bring their friends into their spaces, and they want to show off their talents. And so it's really us sort of moving forward with that desire, the knowledge, all of our knowledge that it's going to take an army of creators to build out this metaverse concept, and making it as accessible as possible. So we want Fortnite Creative to be even more accessible. We want people to be able to create bespoke spaces that don't necessarily live within the Fortnite aesthetic, within the Fortnite universe, to be able to make them your own, so that you can have your personal IP there, or you can have your brand IP there, and they can be incredibly fun, engaging spaces, and bring people together, and so that we can learn, so that we can purchase, so that we can have community-driven experiences together, and be interconnected. And then the dream thereafter is that you've got all this interconnection in these growing hubs, whether it's Sandbox or whether it's Fortnite or whether it's Roblox, and then the dream is that there's a door from Fortnite into Sandbox, there's a door from Roblox into Minecraft, and everything in between. But we've got to sort of bit by bit build out these spaces, make them interconnected, allow people to move freely and take their identity and take their their possessions, whatever their passions, their trophies, whatever they may be. And so the first few steps really are allowing people to just create incredible experiences, and then we'll slowly erode the barriers of entrance and exit.
Clear. That's very interesting, and looking forward to see that coming. And I think we have time for just one more question, and this time coming from the audience. We have a few ones, but for the sake of time, just selecting one. And whoever of you wants to answer can pick it up. Here's it. Do you think the current age of the internet is over and we are going to live a complete new environment, or will it be more an evolution of what we are already doing? Putting it into practice, do you think that people will slowly abandon platforms as Instagram and TikTok and move to new platforms, or will they coexist? Long question, but probably the answer is not long. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to say yeah.
I'm
just going out there. No, I've got evidence. Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to be the big tech players. They're going to be around. They're going to change. They're going to iterate. But I do think blockchain technology is going to become more and more adopted over time, and that will be the kind of foundation or the next evolution of the internet. And then we can transact value, culture, money, items. So I think everyone and everything will move on to the blockchain and be NFT based. I don't know how long that'll take, but I think it's inevitable. So.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Short answer is yes, of course. But I think that kind of shift has already occurred. So social media and metaverse will be one thing in the future. And I strongly believe that shouldn't be such a big drama. Like we shouldn't be like one way or another, here or there. The world will be way more integrated, in my views, and more decentralized. So hopefully those big brands and companies, tech companies, will decide that part of what they will want to do, it's in the end of the community. So it's a way more I would say flat organization than vertical. So I think it will be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Also from a creative agency point of view, I can confirm that everything that we do in terms of media and comms planning is in the area of opening up to more and more channels rather than substituting, because people are adding more channels to their experiences just based on what they want to experience rather than where they are. So they start from the experiences rather than from the platform itself. So thanks very much for this chat. I think our time for this event is over. It was really, really a pleasure to have you. I cannot thank you enough. So yeah, if you have any more questions from the audience, just you can write to us, and you can find everything about this event and the episode that was coming previously on our social channels. And yeah, thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Right.
much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.